What up, Yins? It's Brody and Pat back here for another episode of the BarDahnPod. We'll start with the NHL top 100 moments coming to a close today. Today's the last day for voting, and it came down to Bobby Orr's famous goal in the Stanley Cup Final and Mario Lemieux's 5 goals, 5 different ways. Personally, I think the Lemieux 5 goals, 5 different ways is more unique, I guess. Maybe not necessarily a better play. Nobody else is ever going to do that again. You know, people are going to score the game-winning goal, countless times, in the Stanley Cup Final to win it. But, you're never going to see, you hardly even see 5 goals scored in a single game anymore anyways, let alone each in a different way.
Yeah, I mean, we're a little bit biased given that we're Penguins fans, but I completely agree with that on that aspect because, like you said, it's unheard of for 5 goals to be scored by the same player in a single game anymore, let alone to be done 5 different ways, especially like now with like penalty shots aren't really prevalent in today's game outside of the shootout. So for that to happen again is it's probably gonna never happen again. But like you said, game-winning goals in the Stanley Cup or like even any of the game finals are, that's gonna happen across the board every single year. You're gonna have some games like that all the time. I mean, it wasn't the Stanley Cup, but Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals last year, went to overtime, and Kunitz buried the game winner, and it's always going to happen. So like I said, voting for that ends I think tonight, and then they're going to announce the winner at the Winter Classic, I believe, on the 1st of the year. All right, so next topic on board is the Philadelphia Flyers have now lost a current active streak of 9 games in a row. Those all haven't been regulation losses. They have, I think 5 of the 9 have gotten points for an overtime or a shootout loss. So what do you think the problem is in Philadelphia?
Well, I mean, I think their problems are similar to what the Penguins' problems are. They have no depth scoring. Their top line has scored, I think, 40% or something like that, somewhere around there, of the goals, that the team has scored. They have a lot of young players, too, especially, back on the blue line and everything. I think they've made an improvement in the net in this offseason, but they're still lacking in other areas. Their defense isn't that great. And a big part of that in the 9 games that they've lost here is, that they've had the lead in, I think, at least half of those games, and they've blown it. So it's not, it's not like they aren't giving themselves a chance to win the games, but once they kind of have the game in their favor, they're giving it up. And then the other team, has been coming back and at least forcing it to overtime, and then, either ending it in overtime or ending it in a shootout. So they're getting points, but at the end of the day, they still lost 9 in a row.
Which has taken them well out of the playoff race. They're now 6 points behind a playoff spot. And like we mentioned last week, not being in a playoff spot around Thanksgiving, the stats don't lie that you're more than likely not going to be in the playoffs come April.
Right. And with us being from Pennsylvania and being Penguins fans and stuff like that, obviously there's a huge rivalry there. But I know some people that are Flyers fans and, have some friends that are from that side of the state. And I've seen a lot of stuff with people kind of calling for Dave Hackstall's head. I mean, it's only the end of November. I don't think they're really at that point yet, maybe. But maybe the GM could do the team a favor and do Hackstall a favor and, maybe make a move or something like that or shake something up. Other than that, I don't know if they really have anything else or any other options. A lot of people will obviously look at firing the coach first if the team is struggling, but I don't know. He hasn't been the coach there very long. I think only 2 years. Maybe this might be his third year. I mean, I guess if you can't hack it, you can't hack it. But he hasn't really done anything. The team hasn't really done anything as far as playoffs or anything like that with him there. So I can see it from both sides, and it's not easy to watch your team lose night in and night out. Especially if they give you that little bit of hope, by taking the lead in the game and then just blowing it like they have been. So
as I was going through some things here, so one of the things that I've noticed is, we talked about the New Jersey Devils and how they were kind of playing over what their expectations were, and how they're currently in a playoff position right now. And I just came across a stat that their record in 1-goal games, they're 9-1-4. So that to me is playing a big role in their in their standings and where they're at right now. And 1-goal games could go either way. So I feel like if that number starts to even out, that they're going to drop out of the playoff race.
Yeah, they've even dropped, I think even just since we talked last week, it looks like they've dropped a few spots.
Yeah, they've been a little bit like mediocre since we last spoke. I believe they lost two out of 5, so they were 3-2 since last week, I believe. So they're kind of leveling out a little bit, and but that was just interesting to me to see that they of 14 1-goal games, they've gotten 13 points. Or not points, but in 13 games they've earned points in 1-goal games. So, and the other thing is that in October they were 8-2, and their record dropped substantially in November to 6-4-4. So that's playing a huge part in it as well.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at their schedule right now for December, and it doesn't really get any easier for them. They play Columbus 2 times in a row, LA, Anaheim, the Rangers twice, Chicago, and then they play the Capitals at the end of the month. So,
and oddly enough, Columbus has a similar record to theirs in 1-goal games. They're 9-0-1. So when those two teams meet, it could end up being a really good game just in that aspect of it. But, with their tough schedule coming up, I could see them dropping out quicker than what was expected out of the playoff race.
I will also say, too, that it is kind of refreshing to see a different team, in there, at least up to this point, instead of it being, the usual teams that we have been seeing the last couple of years. It's nice to see some fresh meat in there, and we'll see if they can stick around. But
yeah, just going through the rest of the league a little bit as I'm going through some stuff here. Anaheim is starting to play like they have injuries. I mean, they're 4-6-3 this month, and they're losing a lot of games that they are expected to. I mean, not expected given their injury circumstances, but if they had a whole roster full of healthy players, then they would be expected to win then. So they're dropping a lot more games than what they were at the beginning of the season, kind of just skating by. So I'm kind of having my doubts now because we don't know when we're getting Kessler back. We don't know when we're getting Patrick Eves back. I think Getzlaf is still at least a month out before he's going to be back. So they could be facing a lot of adversity here coming, and and now to transition a little bit, Nashville is one of the hottest teams in the league right now. They've only lost 2 games in regulation this month, with their record at 10-2-1 for November. So they kind of had a slow start in October, but they've really picked it up in this month of November. The same thing could be said for the Rangers as well. They started off at 4-7-2, and now they've only lost 3 games in November, so they started to come around a little bit as well.
Yeah, and looking at the other New York team there, the Islanders, they've been playing some pretty good hockey lately too, especially John Tavares.
Mm-hmm.
He's on a goal scoring tear as of late, and I think a big part of that is a big part of how that team does is how well he plays, and if he's going, then the rest of the team is going too. I still think they're a little weak in the net, but they haven't lost a game at home in regulation yet. So I think they're the only team actually that hasn't.
Yeah, they have 0 losses in regulation at home, 2 in overtime.
So yeah, they're another team that was on the outside looking in last year, and right now they're sitting second in the Metro. So
let's see. I mean, the Winnipeg Jets have also turned it up here a little bit in November. I mean, quite a few teams have turned it around from slow starts. Capitals, started 5-6-1, and now they've won 9 games in November. So, it seems like some of the teams have been able to turn things around, and some of them kind of slowed off a little bit, which is expected. I mean, you're not expected, the Tampa Bay Lightning only lost 3 games in October, and they've already lost 4 in November. I mean, granted, we're at the end of it, but they're kind of starting to slow down a little bit too. So it'll be interesting to see how true the Thanksgiving playoff thing holds, since we've seen some teams kind of turn it around and some of them start to even out.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely can't win a championship, in October or November, but you can definitely lose it. And
oh yeah, absolutely. And that goes back to Edmonton still. I mean, they're still not playing up to what their expectations were. I mean, they were a 500 team in November, so I guess that is playing a little bit better, but they're still not up to what was clearly expected of them by not only us, but NHL analysts across the board. They're still not in a playoff spot, and they're still in danger of, not even coming close to it.
Yeah, and they just played Arizona last night at home, which Arizona is currently tied with Buffalo for the worst team in the league. Both teams have 16 points, and it took Edmonton to take them to overtime, to win that game, which, last year, they should have easily beaten them, in regulation. But I really don't even know what the problem is there. I don't think their lineup changed much from last year to this year. I think they actually added some pieces as opposed to losing some. But it's interesting to see what's going on with that team, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. They keep playing like this, then they might be sellers come the trade deadline as opposed to buyers to make that push. So
yeah, and it would kind of be interesting to see, maybe not necessarily sellers, because they do have a lot of young talent. I don't know too many guys that they can move other than maybe Lucic or some of the guys that didn't really weren't really drafted into the franchise. So I don't think they would be able to, not necessarily be able to, but I don't know that they would move too many guys off the team at that position.
Yeah, I'd have to take a closer look at their current roster to see, who's going to be a free agent at the end of the year, and then, obviously that would be a big determining factor on who they would, maybe consider moving. I think when they traded Eberle to the Islanders for Ryan Strome, that really hurt the team. I really don't know what they saw in Ryan Strome, and his numbers this year definitely reflect that. To me, Eberle is a far better player, but that's only one guy at the same time too. So you can't really put all the blame on that.
No, you can't. So
all right, let's see here. What do we got up next?
Hat tricks.
Yep, a couple more over this last week. 4 more since we recorded the last episode.
Yeah, and so to this date, this is November 29th. Actually, after the games played on this date in 2016, we were at 14 hat tricks for the year. At this day on this year, and without today's games being played, we're at 27. So we're still sticking at right around double of the hat trick production as we had last year. And obviously after tonight's games, it could go even higher. But it seems to be sticking right around that 3 to 4 hat tricks per week for every week this season.
Yeah, it seems like almost every night, we're texting back and forth that somebody else had scored a hat trick. So it's pretty crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, Alex Ovechkin has his 3rd hat trick on the year already, and 2 of the names that had them, aren't your household names. I mean, yeah, Tyler Seguin, Ovechkin, but Alex DeBrincat from Chicago and Radek Faksa from Dallas. So Dallas had 2 in the past week, and that one with Faksa was a shutout as well. So all 3 of his goals, it was a 3-0 shutout, and he accounted for all of them. And DeBrincat was against Anaheim, so I fucking love that.
Yeah, he's a rookie, and he's right up there in the rookie scoring race. Fax has been around the league for at least a few years now, but that was also his first career hat trick. So a lot of guys, of those 26, 27 that we have so far this year, yeah, a lot of those are firsts, and like you said, aren't the names that we're used to seeing. But with scoring being up around the league, it's not exactly surprising, I guess. But a lot of these guys, you wouldn't really expect it. And at the same time, there's guys that you would have should have already had one with the scoring being up like that, and they haven't even come close yet. So definitely an interesting thing that we're going to keep an eye on every week.
Yeah, and oddly enough, well, not oddly, but obviously it was a natural hat trick for Faksa, but they were all even strength. One was 4-on-4, but that's still even strength. So no penalties actually really, no
power plays or played a role. No empty netters involved there.
Yeah. Yeah, they were all in the second period, so no empty netters. 2 of them actually came seconds apart. One was at 1933 and 1941, so 8 seconds apart, right before the end of the period.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting thing to look up. Not
how many hat tricks have been
fastest hat trick?
Oh, yeah.
21 seconds.
3 goals in 21 seconds. Holy shit.
Yeah, it was Bill Mosienko.
Never heard of him.
Neither have I. But he played 30 years before I was even born, so He was a Blackhawk, and in that game they played the Rangers on March 23rd of 1952.
52 was a good year. All right, let's get into our weekly Pens talk. Obviously, we got two big stories right now. Start with Matt Murray's injury, going on the IR for what looks to be for a few weeks. Casey DeSmith's called up. Kind of looks like Jari's going to be number one for the time being. It's finally going to be nice to get DeSmith some action. The last time he was called up, he didn't even play a game, and he was pretty much sent back down after sitting on the bench for, was it one game or two?
I think it was just one.
Yeah, I think it was one as well. They have back-to-back action coming up this weekend, so we should get our first look at DeSmith over the weekend. Probably going to be on Saturday at the game that we're going to attend.
Yeah, home and homes
with Buffalo.
Yep, and they should win both of those games with how bad Buffalo has been playing lately. There's no reason for them to really lose those games, but
we've seen weirder things happen now.
Yeah. But just to touch on the Murray thing, from watching the game, and I've watched the replay a couple different times since then, it looked like it was either something with his knee or possibly something with like maybe a hamstring or something like that. Jakub Voracek from the Flyers, was driving to the net, and he kind of went forehand, backhand, and then tried to go back to the forehand. And when he went back to the forehand, he lost an edge and ran right into Murray. I've seen a lot of people on Twitter, complaining that there should have been a penalty, there should have been this, there should have been that. That he could have avoided hitting Murray and things like that. But I didn't see it in all the times that I've watched it. And, even watching the game, I never got, any sort of angst or anything like that or anger. I never felt like it was intentional. Voracek was a hockey play in my eyes. He had a scoring opportunity. It was essentially like a partial breakaway. And, you're not going to tell a guy not to drive hard to the net, and take away a scoring opportunity just because the possibility of him running into the goalie is there. I'm sure he didn't intend to do it. I'm sure he didn't see it playing out that way or anything like that. It was just, an awkward way that Murray went down, and his leg kind of got pinned between Voracek and the post, before the goal came off of its moorings. But, even if you give the Flyers a penalty there, at most it would have garnered, maybe a 2-minute goalie interference call, but that still doesn't take away the fact that Murray was injured on the play. It doesn't really make any difference as far as that goes. In the long run, the Penguins still ended up winning that game. So,
yeah, I saw some of the back and forth you had on Twitter with some of the people. And you're completely right. There was nothing malicious about it. The guy lost an edge. It's hockey. It was a hockey play. It's different if he doesn't lose an edge and he just goes barreling right into them. But the fact that he lost an edge, there was nothing malicious about it. It was just, kind of one of those, not necessarily freak plays, but it's hockey. Injuries are going to happen. There's no way in hell that the NHL can hand out a fine for that. And, it wasn't a penalty either. There's no reason. I think a lot of where it's coming from is that, it was against the Flyers. So, of course, Pens fans are going to be upset about anything that happens, especially when a player's injured. But at the same time, it could have been a lot worse. I think we got pretty lucky that it's only like a week-to-week injury and it's not going to be anything long-term where he's missing half the season. Fleury's still out, And, Fleury's been out since I think the second week of the season for Vegas. And
yeah, he's played 4 games so far this year.
So, I mean, the way I see it, we got lucky. We're going to bite the bullet here a little bit using some second string goaltending. But, teams learn to rally around these kind of adversities, especially if they know how to win. I mean, Vegas is a prime example of it. I mean, they're still continuing, a pretty good season, given that they're on a third and fourth string goalies. So it's not a huge hurdle that they have to overcome. So, yeah, I there's no reason to get bent out of shape about that play. I don't know why people are. If you can, if our listeners can give us some, relevant feedback about it and why it was malicious. But, I've seen the video. I've seen the pictures from the Associated Press and everything. And Voracek clearly lost an edge. I mean, he's basically standing on his ankles in one of the photos that I saw before he makes contact with Murray. So there's not a damn thing malicious about it, and everybody can just shut up about it now, really.
Right, and like you said, a lot of it has to do with it being, the Flyers, obviously, and he was also the player that ran into Murray. It would have been 2 years ago in the 15-16 season that gave him a concussion. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people are kind of looking at that where maybe he has some sort of, I don't know, grudge or something like that with Murray, for lack of a better word, I guess. But players are going to play hard every night. It doesn't matter who they're playing. Yeah, they might play a little bit harder, if they're playing a rival like that or whatever. But, you could have swapped in any goalie, any team into that net, and the same thing easily could have happened. There's a lot of people, you brought up Fleury. There's a lot of people that's, after it happened, of course, were, oh, well, this is what you get for sending Fleury away. Well, Fleury, like we just said, has only played 4 games this season and has been hurt and been out with a concussion too. So, yeah, if he was here, obviously, when that happened, he wouldn't have been in Detroit playing them that night and whatever, however you want to, play that out in your mind or whatever. But the bottom line is players can get hurt at any second, in any game for the strangest reason.
Yeah.
So, it is what it is. You got to take it in stride. And like you said, it's not the end of the world. Nothing's broke, nothing's, torn or anything like that. As far as we know that, he's they have him listed week to week. So obviously it's not anything that's going to require surgery or for him to be out long term. He could only miss, maybe 2 weeks. He could maybe miss 4 though at the same time. But, we've already seen solid play from Tristan Jarry. Last Saturday is a great example of how he can play and how the team can play in front of him. So if they can play that same way that they played whenever they beat Tampa Bay, then, I think they'll be fine. We obviously haven't seen what Casey DeSmith can do yet. He probably isn't going to get, too much action. We might see him in maybe, depending on how long Murray's out, maybe 3, 4, 5 games at most, something like that. But I don't think it's anything, that warrants them going out and trying to find, another like veteran goalie to bring in or anything like that. I think Jarry has the talent, and now is his time to showcase it. So let's see what he can do.
I was trying to find it, but I don't think this. Trying to find about Niemi if he was moved at all again. No, he's still.
Yeah, Carey Price is back, so
looks like he's still on the Canadiens roster. So
for now.
Just wanted to look that up real quick, see what.
Well, I think Montoya is still hurt though too. I think he's their backup, right? Yeah. I'm pretty sure that he is still hurt. So at least until he comes back, we'll see what happens. All right, you want to get into this last little bit of our Penguins talk here, and then we'll wrap this up.
Yeah. So the rumors are out. Ian Cole has been scratched the last 3 games, and it didn't take long for some rumors to surface about it, that they're trying to trade him. In essence, it makes sense. You know, they don't trade him this season, he's going to walk after this season, because the Penguins blew their load on their defensemen as far as contracts go. I mean, they're paying a lot of money to Dumoulin and Mata and Schultz and Letang. I mean, I mean, like it or not, Cole's gonna be gone.
But yeah, at the very least, by the end of the season, Ian Cole will no longer be a Penguin.
I guess the question on everybody's mind is, what are they going to be looking for? Are they going to be looking for a replacement for Cole, or are they going to try and go after that depth scoring on the third line? Because, you know, Sheahan, whatever the fuck his name is, you know, he's not really producing as far as scoring goes, so could possibly move him to the fourth line, but you know, they definitely need depth at the third line. So what kind of direction do you think they take as far as with this move with Cole goes?
I saw some things that said that as soon as, you know, those rumors come out, or, you know, as soon as word got out that he was available for a trade, and that the Penguins were interested in trading him, that there were several different teams interested, but Toronto is the only specific team that I heard, which, you know, there was also talks earlier in the year that the Penguins were interested in possibly, you know, trading for Tyler Bozak, which, you know, that would be your third line center, you know, that they're looking for if the trade would work out. I don't think his production is all that great so far this year, but he did play well, you know, on a line with Kessel when Kessel was in Toronto. They were actually roommates whenever he lived up there. So, you know, there's definitely that familiarity. Same thing with Hunwick. Obviously, he played up there, you know, with Bozak as well. So that's the only specific thing that I've heard, you know, as far as teams that are interested, which, you know, they're pretty much overloaded with, you know, young talent and with centers. I believe that they usually have Mitch Marner playing on the wing up there, but he could play center if needed. They have the guys that if they did trade Bozak, that they could, you know, fill that void at center for him. And you know, they're kind of weak on the defense, you know, still. You know, that's, I think, where they're looking to improve, and, you know, Ian Cole would definitely help them, you know, in that area.
So you mentioned about Kessel. So if they were to pick up Bozak, are you suggesting, like, where do you put Bozak then? I mean, if he was comfortable with Phil Kessel, I mean, he's obviously not going to play on the same line as him, because, you know, for that to happen, you have to move Malkin, or you have to move Kessel to the third line. So where does Bozak fit in the Pens lineup?
He would be the third line center for sure. He's a better center than Sheahan, but he's obviously not better than Evgeny Malkin. So,
right.
Yeah, he would slot in at the third line center there. And, you know, I'm not saying necessarily that, you know, they would move Kessel down to the third line with Bozak if, you know, they did bring him in, but Just saying, that they have that familiarity and the option would be there. If they decided to do that, though, I mean, I would totally understand it because that would kind of balance out your scoring a little bit more. But, I guess Brian Rust, would maybe have to move up then and play on that line with Malkin.
Yeah, I wouldn't entirely be opposed to it, because they can obviously distribute the minutes evenly between those top three lines if need be. And if if you do put a guy like Kessel on the third line, you pretty much would have to give them all even playing time.
And with the way Kessel's playing so far this year, this might be the best season of his career up to this point. But with the way that he is playing, I think you could probably play him with just about anybody, and they're going to produce. Riley Sheahan is a great example of that because with Malkin out, the last 4 games, I think Sheahan has points now in his last 4 of 6, 5 of 6, something like that, which didn't really start happening until he started playing on that line with Kessel. So
right, and I wanted to add to that is because that's a direct correlation of playing with Kessel because he already pretty much matched his season production just from playing on that line for a few days. So would you be opposed to moving Malkin to a wing position and letting Bozak play center with Kessel?
Ooh, I would say no, just because, if they still had either Bonino or even Matt Cullen still, I would maybe consider it. But I think with Crosby, Malkin, Bozak, Sheahan down the middle, that would be their strength. And, they have enough wings that I don't think they really need to do that, to move Malkin.
Because one of the things that we touched on before was Gensel playing center. And he did play center for a few games. And, he didn't do bad. Because could you even explore the possibility of moving Gensel to third line center if they brought Bozak in, obviously, and maybe have Gensel play with Hagelin and who else would be there? Would it be Rust?
If your second line was Malkin, Bozak, and Kessel, then then your third line would likely be Hagelin, Gensel, and Rust.
Which
anything is possible, I guess. But yeah, the only thing that I don't really like about Gensel at center is his size. He really doesn't. He wasn't bad, when he was in there like that. But they were pretty quick to move him back to the wing once Carter Rowney was healthy enough to get back into the lineup. So. Yeah, in a pinch, he was okay there, but
the only reason that I was exploring the whole Malkin thing is, we've watched enough games, we've been to enough games where Malkin's getting kicked out of the faceoff circle pretty much every time that he's in the game anyway. So, does it really hurt anything if you just automatically put him on the wing to begin with, or because you could always have that where he goes back to the center of the ice after the draw anyway.
Yeah, I guess anything is really possible. They're obviously looking for that depth scoring, but however that may come. So, from what I've heard, there's no trade imminent.
Yeah, obviously this is all speculation, so.
Absolutely, 100%.
Nothing's gonna.
And it has nothing to do with Cole's play, from what I'm hearing either.
Yeah, there's no reason. I don't know if you caught. I don't know who wrote. I read a article yesterday about Cole's play, and on the team he has held opposing teams to the least amount of shots as far as defensemen go.
Yeah, so I did see that.
His play is not bad at all. I mean, he has, if anything, his play has been the best as far as statistics go. So yeah, you can't really say anything about his play. It's strictly a business move at this point because of his contract.
Yeah, and I've heard people say that that's not it. You know, like if a team is in playoff contention, or if they think that, you know, if they think that they have an actual shot at winning the cup again, then they keep the players that they think that they can win with. Which, I mean, I guess I would believe that to a certain extent, maybe, but I can't just overlook the fact that, you know, he is an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year that is going to, you know, probably yield a contract that's, you know, somewhere around double, I would think, of what he makes now, which is like $2.5 million or something like that. So he'll probably rake in like a contract with $4 to $5 million somewhere, which is kind of crazy because before he came here, you know, he was pretty much like in the doghouse all the time and scratched constantly in St. Louis. And then he came here and, you know, he's been scratched a couple times. I've heard some different things about people saying that he and Sullivan butt heads on some things or have, you know, had their disagreements or don't necessarily get along all that well. But, I mean, I don't know how much I really would put into that either.
I don't think you can really put anything into that because it's a business, you know. You're not gonna get benched because of personal disagreements. This isn't high school, you know. This is a professional business where you make your money based on your skill set and not your opinion. So whoever's saying that they butt heads and that's the reason he gets scratched, I'm going to highly disagree with that and just say it's a bunch of bullshit, really.
Yeah, I mean, they very well might not get along, but at the end of the day, if he makes the team better and gives the team more of a chance to win, then, you know, any coach is going to take that over personality clashes or anything like that.
Yeah, because the same thing could have been said, you know, you hear all this stuff that, once Tocchet left, you know, Phil Kessel is going to cause a bunch of trouble on the team. So, all right, are you going to say the same thing about Kessel? Are you going to bench Kessel or healthy scratch him because, you know, he's not getting along with Mike Sullivan or he's not getting along with Mark Recchi and not getting along with the rest of the team? No, you're not going to bench him. The fact of the matter is, if you have the skill set and you don't need time off due to like recovery of any sort of like minor injury, you're going to be in the lineup. So, yeah, I don't agree with any of that at all.
I also heard that the like front office and stuff like that thinks that at times he's been too chatty with the media, which I thought was kind of funny because, I mean, I get it. You know, you obviously don't want the players to be saying too much, but the interviews and stuff like that, you know, the cookie cutter, like, oh, well, we got to play better as a team, we got to do this, we got to do that, like, you know, the run of the mill answer, and it gets old. I don't really care too much to you know, pay attention to anything like that, but I don't think that that's really any reason, or, you know, also doesn't have any factor in them considering trading him. But I just thought that was, you know, funny that they thought he talks too much, basically.
Yeah.
I think the big thing, and it's no coincidence from the way I see it, it's that once Matt Hunwick came back, they both play the same side of the ice, and neither one of them are very good or, you know, good at all on their off wing. So that causes problems with, you know, that bottom three, you know, defensive pairing. Since they, you know, one of them can't move to the left, then, you know, I guess Ian Cole is the one that makes sense, you know, to scratch, as far as maybe not to scratch him, but, you know, to put him on the trading block, you know, because of all those other things, you know, his contract and him being a hotter commodity than Matt Hunwick. And, they just signed Hunwick, to a 1-year deal in the off season. So,
yeah,
they're not going to move him, obviously. So, yeah, I think that definitely plays a part in it. But the big thing to me is his value is never going to be higher. So, they don't really have much trade chips otherwise. I don't think that they really have much interest in. I saw some things of people saying like, well, why doesn't it make more sense to try and move Dumoulin or Olimata, because you could get more in return for them. They have, bigger contracts, so you would free up more salary cap and things like that, which in theory, yeah, I guess. I think, Mata has so far played better this season than, we've seen from him in the last, probably 2 seasons. And I think Dumoulin has played a little bit worse than what we're used to seeing from him. I'm not saying that Dumoulin is playing bad by any means. And I think a lot of it also has to do with, for the majority of the season so far, he's been paired with Chris Letang. That doesn't really help.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to move somebody, then, it almost has to be Cole. I don't see them having any interest in moving a guy like Brian Rust or, Connor Sheary. I thought maybe at the beginning of the season, if Sheary continued to play, the way that he did in the playoffs, which is kind of quiet and really not up to par, I thought maybe he would be on the trading block, but he's second or third on the team in goals. A lot of people, I'm sure, would look at Carl Hagelin and his contract and, how much, he's not producing and things like that. But it's easy to sit here and say, well, like, this guy's playing bad, so why don't you trade him? Why would any other team want that? If he's not playing well, then, nobody's making phone calls to Jim Rutherford about Carl Hagelin because of the way that he's playing right now.
Yeah, and that's the problem with a lot of like your casual hockey fans, is that they don't understand how the business works. You just can't just trade a guy because you want to. The receiving team has to want him too, and obviously if you're looking to trade him because of poor performance, then obviously the other team's not going to want him either. So yeah, that's kind of one of the reasons that that I wanted to do, like we started this podcast. It's part of the reason I wanted to be a part of it, was to try and educate some of the lesser educated hockey fans. I don't mean it to sound like malicious like that, or that you're dumb or anything like that, but your casual fans don't know the business side of it. They don't know the in-depth strategies, and you always see the Fleury talk going on Twitter, and I wish Fleury was still here, Murray sucks, and all this other stuff. Everything happens for a reason, as cliche as that sounds. And it's mostly business. So yeah, obviously Fleury was a fan favorite in Pittsburgh. And obviously right now hindsight's 2020, but if we keep Fleury over Murray, we're still in a shitty situation at this point in the season, because Murray's injured and so is Fleury. So nothing's really changing anything, but I would just like to see fans kind of look at things in a bigger picture as to why certain moves are made. And yeah, that's really all I have to say. I just trying to educate the hockey population.
Yeah, I think that's kind of too like what would maybe set us apart from some of these other hockey podcasts and stuff like that. Yeah, we might not have big name guests, or we might not have media credentials. We might not write columns for DK or the PG or anything like that, but we're just average people. But we pay attention, and we understand the game and everything like that, I think, more than your average hockey fan. And that's pretty much all. I'm on the same page with you as far as that goes. Is anybody listening, I don't want to sound like we're above anybody or anything like that, but I think we give a pretty good perspective on everything. And, we don't really just keep it all Pens talk or anything like that. We try to touch on just about anything that's going on around the leagues.
Yeah, and just to add to that, you can explore other podcasts as well, even the bigger ones. We've had the same topics that they have, and even had some of these topics before that they've even touched on them. So us talking about this kind of stuff, that's validation for me. We've hit topics before these big name podcasts have done it, like Spit and Chicklets, and some of like the ESPN and Yahoo Sports podcasts. To me, that's just validation. We know what we're talking about. We know when to talk about these topics and why they're relevant in the game today.
We're going to wrap the episode up right there. Give us a follow on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at BarDahnPodcast. Tell your friends, share it around. Once we start to get some more listeners and some more followers, we plan on doing some giveaways, so be on the lookout for that. See ya.